Okay, welcome to today's webinar. We're covering the WashU eConsent 2.0, and we're going to go over creating the eConsent project today. My name's Chris Sorensen. I'm a medical informaticist here at WashU, and I'm a WashU REDCap administrator. Um, I'm one of the administrators that does a lot of the talking here at these sessions, but we have other WashU REDCap administrators who help support REDCap here at WashU as well. And we are recording this on REDCap version 14.5.15. If you watch this later in the year, we will probably be up to version 15, but that's okay. Everything should still hold as far as the functionality. Before we get started on the actual material, I just want to acknowledge Brittany Miner, who's a colleague here in I2DB, and Megan Dandurand, who is a colleague in the Human Research Quality Assurance Office. They helped a lot with this transitioning of our standard operating procedures and our template project from version 1 to version 2, and also made some additional improvements outside of just some of the specific improvements that happened based on changes to the REDCap application. Also, there is an eConsent working group here that has folks from several compliance areas as well as other stakeholders, and they were heavily involved in the initial rollout of the eConsent, so I want to make sure to acknowledge them as well. Brittany and Megan are here in the chat today, so if you have questions and put them in the chat, they can respond to those. Again, you can unmute yourself if you prefer. Our outline today is pretty simple. Actually, this will be the outline for the webinar today and tomorrow. We're trying to cover all these topics, but these are actually, each one of these sub-bullets here is a link to an SOP. And so when we switch over to my web browser, we're going to log into REDCap, and then we're going to look at these eConsent Confluence pages and these SOPs, and we're effectively going to walk through all of these down to here today and tomorrow. And this is here. This link is here because this is how you can access these SOPs as PDFs. So if you've worked in the eConsent template and SOPs before, they've been primarily as PDFs. I put them up in our documentation Confluence pages because I felt it was easier to navigate around, and I was able to then expand out in some of these two middle sections here that I would say were they left some to be desired in the original PDFs. We were trying to keep them short, but I think with these new pages where you can navigate around, I expanded, added some more screenshots and descriptions. So hopefully those are an improvement to the PDFs, but if you prefer the PDF SOPs, they are available through these pages. Very quick overview of this WashU REDCap eConsent. Let me just get rid of that. Must have been left over from the last presentation I did. Just a quick history of this. We started working on the template and SOPs that we're going to go over today in late 2020. I would like to acknowledge a couple folks who were putting in a lot of work on eConsent before I began, working on the template and the SOPs, which is Katie Kenoy from the Center for Clinical Studies, and also from the Mobile Health Research Corps, who were working on eConsent, I think even before, before March of 2020, when everybody had to start doing eConsent, they were working on that. And then also Caitlin Moore, who worked with the designers at REDCap to try to get some of these eConsent procedures beyond what was in the built-in tool to make it match what we needed it to do here at WashU. So the original design was really Caitlin working with that group, and some of those functions have just been improved by things getting built into REDCap as e-consent has become much more common in the last 5 years, obviously. We had pretty much our only moderate update was in the summer of 2023 when we had a loss of functionality. Basically, there was a bug fixed in REDCap that actually knocked out something we were using. We were not alone in that issue. There was other institutions, and so part of what's now built into REDCap is to overcome that loss of functionality. And so this is really kind of the first, what I would call big change since the original release back in 2022. Um, and the overall process is very similar. It's just a little different in the setup. Why do we have to have all these things? Why can't we just use upload our PDF of a informed consent into the survey and just use the built-in features? Basically, Vanderbilt kind of when they design this, they're designing things for almost 8,000 different institutions who have REDCap at their institutions, and the IRBs across those institutions, across state lines, in several different countries, they have a wide variety of requirements, compliance requirements, and so REDCap kind of builds it up to a certain point and then allows the users of the other institutions to really make sure that it fits what's necessary at their institution. So a couple things that we've built in here. Number one, we've got some instrument templates when you create this, and some of the settings are pre-built, already built in. The survey links are all pen protected. This is something when you're talking about informed consent forms, electronic consent going through emails, having them pen protected is something that's very important for our being in compliance at WashU. Consent documentation is a very highly recommended instrument. The HRQA has these for paper consent, and we basically transferred that into a data collection instrument in REDCap. Participant responses to the consent survey cannot be edited after it's submitted. If you haven't used the e-consent, you'll see why that's important, because you actually come in and sign on the same survey, the same form that the participant completes. And so you don't want to accidentally switch one of their yeses to a no on the informed consent form. And so you cannot do that with this template. It stores the fully executed consent within the record instead of just in the file repository, which is a convenience, an extra convenience. But here's kind of the big thing. What all this leads up to is that you can deliver the fully executed consent form signed by both the participant and the study team member via a pen protected link. Now, why is that so important? The built-in tools for REDCap, if you just go in and kind of click the buttons that they walk you through, number one, they deliver the consent before it's fully executed. You don't get the study team signature delivered to them, and then you also have it delivered as a email attachment instead of a pen protected link. So it's important to add these extra steps in here, because if you send the participant a copy that doesn't have the study team member signature and it's an attachment to an email, that is not secure enough. We need to have that be a pen protected link, not as an email attachment. Okay, so what changed from V1 to V2? There's more changes. There's more changes in the background, but for the big one for us as WashU e-consent users, if we're using this process, is that the tool that was used to allow us to send the fully executed consent with both signatures of the study team and member and the participant was via this multi-signature consent external module. So if you've set one of these up before, this should look familiar to you. And essentially, this has been moved into these built-in tools, this PDF snapshot tool specifically. And it's built into what we would call base REDCap, meaning the base code of REDCap. And the reason why that is important is because the external modules can actually be created by REDCap users at any different institution. And for them to be maintained and continue working over time as REDCap gets upgraded, the team that built the external module needs to continue to update that external module. And so because of that, as people, change jobs, move to different institutions, they may not be able to continue upgrading the external module. So a module can become deprecated over time, where as base REDCap gets upgraded to version 15, version 16, and so on and so forth, if this isn't being upgraded in parallel, it could become not useful in our REDCap version. So having this built into base REDCap, it really ensures that this process is going to continue to work as REDCap gets upgraded. Okay. Okay, so now that is all the slides. We are now going to switch over to the web browser. Just a couple of things as we do that. You can log into redcap.woostel.edu. And then in the email that I sent out, there's a link to this WashU e-consent. But for those of you who are here, I'll just let me just copy this and put it in the chat. If you're watching this video, you are probably already on these pages. But we are going to switch over. One thing I do have open is this example consent document. So when we build our e-consent survey, we have some text just to put in there, just to give examples of how you take this and make it look, make the text match exactly, and it look as much like this as you possibly can in REDCap. So if you want to have that open, I will be using this document. Okay. As I log into REDCap, let me know if there are any questions that you have. Okay. Once you're logged in, you should be on this page. Just to show you here, when you come to the home page, there is a WashU REDCap e-consent line up here. The web page link takes you right to where we're going to go next, which is this this Confluence page. And also, after we create a project, which we're going to do in just a moment, I'll show you where this is linked to within the project. But as we're working on this, basically, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go to this Create REDCap e-consent project. And what you can see here is this has sections mapped out at the top where you can click to just go to specific sections. And as you go to specific sections, there is also at each section, at the top of each section, there's a way that I can jump around to different sections in here. Okay, so if you came to the WashU REDCap e-consent page, this is the main page here. It also has a little bit of extra explanation of why this is necessary, some of the things I talked about earlier. But if you go to REDCap e-consent here, this is effectively what I'm going to walk through as we go through this demonstration. So I'm going to move mine over to my other screen, but you can have yours open as we go through. But effectively, the first thing it says is that we just need to log in, which we have, and we need to create a new project. I am just going to start by naming my project. I'll just call it eConsent 2.0 webinar, and I'll give it a date of January 29th, 2025. Okay, before we actually create this project, I'm going to talk about project's purpose. So an assumption with this is that if you're using this consent, this is for research. Okay, so at first I'm going to select research and I'm going to just talk about that for a moment, but then we'll go back to practice just for fun today. Unless you are actually planning to use this project as your e-consent project. If you're following along with an e-consent that you're already working on, you can select research and create this. But when you're first creating a project with an e-consent, there's an assumption you should know the PI. Okay, so when you're first creating this, you should know the PI's name, and you should be able to at least give us the name and email. I can't spell today. So you put the name, email, but you may not have the IRB number, and that's fine because when you create the project and when you move the project to production, there's a link that shows you how to add this IRB number. But when you create it, you should be able to add both of these, the PI name and email. And then you have to select at least one of these down here, regardless of what it is. You know, often it may be clinical research and any other items that you want to check off for that. But for today, as I mentioned, at least for me, I'm going practice just for fun because I'm doing this just for demonstration purposes. This will not be a research project. Select use a template, and then we scroll all the way to the bottom because this is the WashU REDCap eConsent template project, and this goes in alphabetical order, so we're down at the bottom. Go ahead and select create project once you have created the eConsent template project. And again, here's this link to give you instructions on how to update the IRB after you've created the project. So you can add that IRB number in there before you get started. For now, go ahead and select I agree. And I'll give a moment just to make sure everybody got to this point where they created the template project. And one way to know that you got this right is you should see this designate an email field, and surveys should be enabled. Okay. So we effectively just completed the first step of our first section of our e-consent SOP. And now that we're in this project, if you ever need to jump to this quickly, this is always here, right in this left-hand menu. You have the WashU REDCap e-consent link. Actually, all these links in this section are WashU specific. We can't modify a lot that's in the REDCap application. So we can't change some of the documentation that's written in here, but we can put these links that get you to our documentation quickly. So if you need that, it's there. You can just jump right out to here and start navigating around. As you can see, this create project section, this is what we just did. We've already completed that, so now we're going to do our project setup section, which just has a couple of steps. So I'll navigate back over. The first is just to make sure this designate an email field has a field here. It should be this consent copy email. If you change this variable name for any reason, make sure to come back here and redesignate a field for communications. The next step is to go to additional customizations, scroll down, and this is an important one. because you're going to click PDF customizations. And here where it says um, hide record ID from PDF header, by default, it always says keep it displayed. No matter what I do to the project that's used to create this template project, it always defaults back to keep it displayed. And we need to hide it. And go ahead and hide it, this one too, just for, we don't have a secondary unique field designated yet, but if you were to designate one, you most likely do not want that going on to the informed consent top right corner. So this needs to be hidden. All right. The next thing we do is go in and check our survey settings for a couple of these instruments. So let's go to Online Designer. And we've got two instruments already enabled as surveys. So we're just going to open this and we just need to check a few important items. On the SOPs, there is a few steps listed here, but it really just refers to a few points on the survey setting. So first of all, that there is example text here in this survey instructions. And when we were working with the e-consent working group, when we first were developing this, the IRB reviewed this text, found it, this is kind of your, if this works for you, you definitely, that this has been reviewed by the IRB. If you make modifications to this, they will see it when you send it to them for review, so then they can determine if that's still okay. Survey design options, we're not going to spend any time on. We'll just leave it at the default settings, but this is something you can change. There is a survey setup and distribution webinar next week, first week of February 2025, or it's on our REDCap training page as well that goes over if you want to change the look and feel of your survey. In this section, the one I want to note is that by default, this is set up that the e-consent survey will be on multiple pages, meaning that anytime we put a section header field in the e-consent survey, it will be on separate pages. The content of before and after that section header will be on separate pages. I find that with longer e-consents, with longer informed consent forms, it seems better to have it broken down into sections this way. But if you uncheck this or if you change this to single page, I should say, you would just have the person scroll down, everything all on one page. No other changes to these sections that I'm going by right now. And another thing I want to point out here that's important for the survey settings is just confirming that this says yes. This is a standard requirement, not just for e-consent, but just for consent in general. At least here at WashU, I would assume at most places, that you have to allow them essentially as much time as they want to determine if they want to sign the consent. So because of that, they have to be able to save and return later. Okay, so just make sure that's yes. And then this should have a little key here basically saying survey login is turned on. And so that will be their way that they can log back into this if they come back at a later time. And then once again, there's some template text here in the survey completion text, and you can replace the email and phone number with your own. I'm just going to do test at no reply .com, or just put in a placeholder one here, 314-111-1111. And you can save changes. And then we'll look at the fully executed consent. We can go through this one a little quicker because it's kind of the same thing. Some example language here. You can change the look and feel if you want to there. It's on multiple pages here, but this one's so short, it doesn't divide up. You'll see that at the end. So this one, doesn't really matter if you do on multiple pages or single page. Again, nothing to change on these ones that I'm scrolling past. And then I want to point out here that again, we give them this save and return later option. And then here we say, allow to return and modify completed responses. The reason for that is we're basically allowing them to come back to their fully executed consent anytime, and they can access it with their PIN as long as they have the link to it. The reason it's fine to let them modify completed responses is because the only field on the survey is a file upload field that's read only. So they actually can't modify it because I've put an extra blocker in here to make it. So it's effectively they can return, but we actually block them from modifying. And so when we get to where the fully executed consent is delivered, that will make more sense because I'll show how you can just kind of go back to it over and over and over again and not really do anything other than view it or download it. Again, some survey completion text here. And I don't know that we changed anything, but I'll click Save Changes anyway. So now we've completed our survey settings check. Okay. So the next thing we do is go to this e-consent and PDF snapshots. And from the slides, we went over, this is actually the new built-in tools here that we're going to use to help deliver the fully executed consent. Let's go ahead and click there. And you should come to the e-consent framework tab first, which you do have the e-consent framework enabled for the survey, for the e-consent survey. And I will use kind of the informed consent, like the actual title of this. I may sometimes replace that with the e-consent survey. So this one that has the actual, is going to have the actual consent language on it. I'll also refer to as the e-consent survey. If I open the settings, I just really want to check a few things here. Number one, we need to be able to allow e-consent responses to be edited by users. This is by users of REDCap here at WashU, not survey respondents. This is so that they can go back in and sign it as the study team member. We'll just put version 1 on this for now. We don't need to fill in any of these other fields other than making sure the signature field is the participant signature. Now, this is kind of a gotcha here when you come in to check this. We do not want to set this to this file upload field within the e-consent framework. You want to leave this blank on this one. But here, you now can alter the name that it's stored with. And we want to take this ID, the record name, off of here. We want that out of the name of the file. So there's a couple areas where we have to go in and make sure the record ID is not getting attached to the consent form. And this one will actually, the settings in this will never deliver it to this version to the participant. This will actually store the consent with only the participant signature in the project repository, the file repository. The next step is when we're going to make it so we can deliver the fully executed consent, which is the PDF snapshots of records. Okay. So we have one here and it says governed by e-consent. We can't do anything there, but we can add a new trigger. Right. And all these steps are mapped out on the web pages of what exactly you want to put in here. So we're going to name this fully executed executed consent. You can see I've done this a few times already, but I'm not going to select that because otherwise it would automatically select everything in my um, on the further boxes down, and I don't want to do that. Okay, so this is our fully executed consent upload. Um, Anytime you see these month, day, year formats, note that we will have to come back and update those after IRB approval. Okay. For step one, this is another gotcha here because we actually do not want to select anything here. We don't want to select this informed consent survey here. The reason is because it only allows us an or statement. And we need to make this happen based on when the signatures get done. Okay, so go ahead and click in here. And then this is one spot where I'm going to bring back over my screen, show you where I'm at here, basically just walking through this. So this is a screenshot of this whole uh, this whole tool when it's set up as you're supposed to have it. And oh, except that I gotta get that out of there on this screenshot. We are going to get this out of there right now, and it says to, but looks like I forgot to on that screenshot. But what I'm looking for right now is I want this logic. Okay, so in step one, trigger conditions, which we're on, uh, we want to leave this blank, and we want to get this logic. And I can just paste that right in there. What's nice about this box is it allows pasting directly from the documentation pages. You'll see copying and pasting is not always so friendly. I do want to point out, though, in this logic editor, it does not say whether it's valid or not. So usually if I delete this quotation and then I put it back, in other logic editors and other parts of REDCap, you'll get a little green check mark where it says valid here. And that does not happen in this one. So it's kind of nice because it makes you know that you got all your the variable names that you put in here. These are all actually in your project. Because like if I accidentally messed up on a variable name, let's say I added this, normally it would say not valid, but I won't be able to catch that here. So that's just a little extra. Just make sure when you paste these in here that it just pastes over as it's supposed to. There's no like lack of spaces here between an and a variable name or something like that. But we'll go ahead and update and close this. And then under scope of the snapshot, we just choose the informed consent form here, because that's the only thing we want to upload into the file upload field. And we want to store as compact PDF. If you are using the multi-language module, go ahead and click this as well. And then we'll store this both to the file repository and to a specific field, which the only one that we have here is the file upload field, which that's one improvement from the external module. In addition to being built in, is that on the external module, it would show every single field on this drop-down menu instead of just the file upload fields. Seems like a small thing, but it is kind of a pain. Here, you need to delete the record name. So it says that in the SOP, and I will get the picture updated so that you only have project ID and then form instrument label. Because this is the one that will be delivered to the it will get delivered to the participant. So we don't want that record ID on there anywhere. All right, so now we've got one that has a name here, but there's no complete survey. There's just logic. And you've still got this one that's governed by e-consent down here. Take a quick pause before we move to the next section for questions, and also just to see if you're still here, if I'm still here with you. Can you still hear me? You do thumbs up or a yes.
Yes, we can
Okay,
hear you.
great. Okay. Um, so we just completed this, and as you can see, I do have in the step 4 to remove this ID name, and this is what the file should be, but it looks like I just took my screenshot one step before I got done. So I will get that updated. All right, let's move back to REDCap. And this, what this does is the this uploads the fully executed consent to a file upload field. We then want to set up an automated survey invitation to deliver that to the participant. So to do that, we go to the designer and we find the automated invitations for the fully executed consent forms. And in here, the first thing we're going to do is make this active. That's just one of those template things where no matter what I do in the template project, it starts this as not active, which that's fine because you need to come in here and update a few things anyway. So the from is really, you can put whatever works for you here. This could be a lab name, it could be a person's name. And then on the sender email, um, number one, try to make sure it's a woostel.edu email. Our system has trouble if it comes from like a bjc.edu or another external collaborator. Try to have a woostel.edu email that you're delivering from. So right now you're seeing my email and the emails that I have listed as the secondary and tertiary email on my account. But if you had other people, other study team members on here, or if you had a lab email as your secondary email, you would see those on this dropdown. Okay, so you could effectively choose exactly who the participant sees this come from. As I'm doing this practice project, I'm just going to choose no reply.woostel.edu. And then, like I said, this could be a first name. So here we're going to say it's a research coordinator, and we'll just give a generic name. Go ahead and choose that. This should be pre-populated. If it's not, it's there for you on the form, and you can copy and paste it in there. And then this should come pre-populated as well. And then over here, a little different from our PDF snapshot, we do actually choose an instrument here or a survey here because it gives us the and option. On the PDF snapshot, it doesn't give us the and, so we have to not select this. But here we want it selected to give us that extra logic to make sure this doesn't go until we want it to. And then the logic in here, you don't have to copy and paste. You you just have to check that it's right, which it's almost the exact same as it's almost the exact same as the logic in the PDF snapshot, with a couple exceptions. It has this extra choice here where the person has to say they want to receive this via email, which we'll go over when we're testing. And then here, instead of saying this field is equal to blank, we're saying this is not equal to blank. And what that means is basically we say the person needs to say they want to get this via email. All the signatures need completed. And then after the PDF snapshot uploads the file into this form and it's no longer blank, that is when we want to trigger the email. So that should have so that logic should be built in, but you can compare it to what's on the SOPs. So we update and close. Then this should send immediately. Basically, as soon as the signature gets done and the file upload, the automatic file upload happens, it should just send. And then we don't have any um, optional reminders because this isn't a survey we're sending them to complete. This is something we're sending them for their records and that they can come back to as long as they want. So they could store it in a file or a folder in their email, and they could have that link to come back to anytime they want. So we don't really need to do um, enable reminders. Go ahead and save there and then close. And I think I made that last transition a little quick. So if you were on the eConsent snapshot and didn't get there, or the eConsent and PDF snapshot, just need to go here to the designer. And then all those settings I just went over are here on the automated invitations. When you first come to it, it'll be set to not active. So just make sure to set that to active, fill in who you want this to be from, and then just check the other settings. All right. So just a couple more things to do here, and we've got the project all set up, and then we will move text um, from our example informed consent form into this e-consent survey. And so the next thing we do, and this is this might be a little out of order in how you might do this overall, but just in how the flow of the SOPs happen. At this point, I have instructions. There's instructions to just add your additional study team members who will consent, who will be obtaining consent. And so here you just go to user rights. And because you created this project, you should have the highest level rights. You should have 3 check marks here, which effectively means you can do anything that's possible for a user to do in REDCap without turning on any extra features. So you can add people here, and I'm just going to add this. I've got a fake account here, and I can just add this with custom rights. If you have a colleague or something that's going to be working with you on e-consent, you could add them. And if the person is only doing e-consent, if they're not going to be building anything on the project or adding people to the project, you don't need to have they don't need to have any of these settings. They certainly can, you just don't need to give them to them. Basically the main thing they need to have access to is to just create records. They need to have data viewing rights for everything. And then they need to have this edit survey responses specifically for this one, because that's what they need to have to be able to go in and sign. And then they need to be able to export the full data set on here. Okay, so if you have them so that they can see this, but you give them no access to export this, what happens is when it does that automatic upload of this survey to the file upload field, it will have nothing on it because this person has no access to export. And REDCap's viewing this as a PDF export over to another instrument. So if I've seen somebody without rights, or if they have de-identified or remove all identifiers, it doesn't fully get over there. So if they have no access, it's a blank paper. If they have de-identified or remove all, you'll actually remove the participants' signatures. So they have to have full exporting rights for this. And if you're somebody you don't want to be, exporting, so first of all, there's not much of a need to do a data export on an informed consent form. It would normally be going in and actually looking at the form rather than doing a data export. But if somebody needs to obtain consent, but you don't want them exporting these files, that's just something you need to discuss with them. But if they are using this process, they need to have full data set export rights on this specific survey. You could give them no access to everything else, but they need it for this. So those are kind of the minimum rights you need to give somebody who has who's going to be obtaining consent. You can give them more, but they at least I need to have that create record, edit the survey, and then export rights on the e-consent survey. And the final thing before we go in and start building the actual survey is to go to alerts and notifications. Again, a little kind of a strange thing with the e-consent or with the project templates is it won't allow me to have an alert turned on. So when you create this project using the template, this is deactivated. So you actually have to go to the alerts and notifications, click show deactivated alerts, and then you come into the options and you re-enable this alert. Then it disappears because you're saying show deactivated alerts, but you no longer have any deactivated alerts. So just uncheck this, and this should be turned on. This one you shouldn't have to change any settings unless you're adding some emails to receive this. So go ahead and go in here and select edit. This one's just going to trigger when this is completed. Okay, so no logic here. This one just happens when this is completed because this is actually going to send a message to the folks who need to sign the consent. We're going to do it immediately, just once. Down here, again, I have just a generic lab name in here. You could change this to your individual name, or you could leave it as lab name. Whatever works for you, I'll just leave it as lab name for here. In the email, we have a specific field where you can say who is signing the attestation, who on the study team is signing the e-consent. And that can be entered into a form, or you can add study team members. Like if I'm always going to be signing this, I can add my study team member here. If there's another study team member, let's just say REDCap help desk is a person, they're always going to be doing this e-consent. I can add them to here as well. So that would give you these are firm email addresses, and then this one is one that you can adjust per participant. And I'll get those ones out of there. We'll just use the email attestation moving forward for this demonstration. And then what you can see down here is it's just a 4 steps here of what you need to do to complete this. And there's a link that's going to take you directly to the form when you receive this alert where you need to sign. So I'm just going to go ahead and say save.